Actually, move the mic so you're talking. Yeah,
Is that better?
that's better.
All right, great. So I'll get us started. Thank you for entertaining us today with a little public workshop regarding the town's courthouse feasibility study. With me is Mark and Ruben, and my name's Joe. We're all part of the Labella team to try to get this project advanced. We started this project a few months ago. One of the key pieces of the study was to develop a comprehensive survey of the town's properties for purposes of really understanding siting opportunities for the new courthouse, being sensitive to the town's local zoning, including form-based code provisions, and also being sensitive to how we would integrate a courthouse facility in the most cost-effective way. Having a comprehensive survey of the town's property was prudent in that it helped us understand where existing parking areas and drainage issues that had been discussed in the past were, so we could try to develop concepts and alternatives that could mitigate other issues concurrently with introducing the new infrastructure necessary to support the court facilities. The survey is pretty detailed in that it's a complete boundary survey as well as topographic survey, and we advanced a subsurface utility investigation, which helped us clarify all of the subsurface utilities on the property. Have the map is up, but we've also brought a couple hard copies, and we'll refer back to the hard copies when necessary as we go into discussing some of the site concepts that we looked at. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ruben.
Thanks, Joe. Just very briefly, and then I think I can go over, is there a mic that's active on the table?
Advance it for you too when you tell me.
All right, yes, thanks, Mark. Yeah, so after we had the survey done, what the background for the survey was we did boundary, we did surface physical features, surface evident utilities, and then we had a subsurface utility investigation done as well. So we've got about as pretty well of an extensive layout of existing conditions as can be gotten. And in that, there were some things that we learned that we weren't aware of at first, which was location of gas lines and sewer lines, and again, other subsurface utilities. The approach that we had was working with the architectural team. They put together a concept that gave a square footage of a building footprint, and then we used that as a kind of a black box rectangle and laid it on a couple of different locations to see what was, where it fit best. With that, three things that we really looked at, and a lot of this is driven by what's the basis for your form-based code, is one, physical location of the building itself. Two is the context of the building in terms of the rest of the campus as a civic building. And then the third is the actual building, the court building itself. And so that was what we had.
And if I could just supplement, the building footprint itself is not like an absolute. We
Right.
can make things a little bigger, smaller, whatever the final programming turns out to be. Placement of where doors and main entrance doors, side doors, the service doors, all that stuff is still very much flexible. And, right now is more of the context of the building footprint and the parking fields. All the pedestrian stuff can all be refined with the building plan refinement. And I think another key piece is, as we're looking at the different options, is cost. And having the location of all the subsurface utilities was important because if we originally were thinking about the west corner of the property, which is, now heavily wooded, but there's no utilities in that location. So trying to weigh the cost of relocating utilities versus significant land clearing, we were trying to come up with some of these cost impacts as part of the site scoping session as well. And it's one of the reasons why I think we recommend deviating from the form-based code relative to most of its provisions outside of building architecture for finishes and landscaping. because the ideal location would be where the current courthouse is, but having to utilize the court operations while you're building a new court, you know, you can't do it in the same spot without a tremendous cost to
I
the
mean, you
town.
guys agree with that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been.
Yeah.
And other courts do it, and I've been
Yeah.
involved peripherally with other courts that have done it. That just takes time and dedication to get the job done.
Yep.
The courts are temporarily displaced while that construction's going on.
Yep,
I've seen it done in less than, a year.
yep,
It's possible
it's possible.
The-
if
the-
people put their heads together here.
I mean, we have had court in this building before, when there was, but not for an extended length of time.
We did initially consider an option one, which was locating in the existing, where the building is, and we discounted it for two reasons. One, as Joe had alluded to, is the construction logistics or the timing of your operations while the construction's going on. The second is that existing building is an asset, and so if that can remain and be used for other town functions, we saw that. If the desire is to have us evaluate that as a viable option, we can put it back on the table, but we made a decision to not pursue that because we felt in the best interest of the town, you've got an asset there that is, has value.
Right. Yeah, the study that we did not show that that building had reached its useful life.
Yeah.
And we have other space needs, so.
And I think another important piece is, again, as Ruben said, it's an asset. So repurposing that building would then be consistent with form-based code. And that's where, it's cheaper to do it upfront by building new somewhere else where it's going to be less obtrusive, less, from a cost perspective, less obtrusive for, continued operation of the court for a duration of a year. And then you can also, once you're relocated the court into the new building, you can repurpose that building. Potentially in concert with some other uses that are on site that could be consolidated there. Site operations, maintenance operations, for example. I think they're using a field trailer now. That repurposing of the current courthouse into an administrative building for, say, the water department and, site facilities with, equipment storage elsewhere might be an ideal repurposing. And then you can bring that building, not only from a location perspective in compliance with the form-based code, but aesthetically with architecture and landscape architecture when it gets
Yeah,
renovated.
okay, I mean, understood. I had the same thoughts also, but
Right.
So, Ruben.
Good. So when we looked at it, when we started putting options together, we really found two logical locations. And before I go into any of the specifics of them, I just want to kind of highlight what was our thought process. One was that right now, the campus is on two parcels, and you have a lot line kind of down the middle. So looking at it in terms of being wholly on one parcel versus straddling that line, which would then ultimately would need a lot line adjustment, that, again, a minor issue, but it is something that we just
Right.
at least put into consideration.
I mean, agreed, we didn't want to consolidate those two properties till we knew exactly where the court was going to go, but
Exactly.
based on what I've looked at, that probably makes sense.
So location and orientation, and again, this was somewhat being guided by the form-based code and partly being guided by the existing buildings and the existing structures that you have, and how do you fit a building in and among the other buildings that are there. So we had identified a site that was pretty much right in the middle of the campus, and then where the community garden is to the rear. It was discussed is that has a potential to either be removed or relocated to a different site. We originally were also looking at the wooded parcel in the back, in the very northwest corner, but again, we felt that's an asset if you can build it in one of the other locations and you don't have to take down all of your woods in the back corner. We, again, felt that was, those were better alternatives to pursue. And again, this is, what I'd also like to state is that the options that we presented, each one of those has their own nuances. Not any one of them is considered to say this is the option. There are elements of one or the other that might be integrated. It was really to get a flavor of what are the constraints, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities at each of the locations. Building access and accessibility, that is really how once your customers, once the users of that building are here, how do they get to the building? Accessibility was key in terms of ramps and layout of those buildings. when Mark talks about the architecture, part of what ties everything together is where the doors are, where the entry points are, where secure versus less secure, public versus semi-public. And all of those were taken into consideration, but will need to be further refined when, when you come up with the final building or the driving building program. And parking and circulation goes off of that because the intent was to look at this as a campus and how shared parking would work, what this building will present as an opportunity, not only on the physical parking and the number of parking spaces. It becomes a part of a discussion that I think goes beyond just this group of what is the real need for all of the buildings and what is the right number. We could max this out to fill out parking spaces everywhere, but that is not necessarily the best planning. So we were looking at options that fill out a space and then others that assume that there would be shared parking and how that would best work with the site.
And just to add, the shared parking is a potential cost savings measure as well. So you're not building more parking unnecessarily.
Right.
And you could still reserve spots if you needed to add it in the future, but if you don't need to build it up front, it's another cost savings feature.
Good. I highlighted ancillary impacts, and with that, I refer to beyond the building itself to make this program work, what's going to be impacted, what's going to be affected on the site, and that affect, again, other buildings, access, utilities, your parking, your electric parking site, starting to think about those kind of things where, depending on where this gets sited and how it gets planned, how it affects other things and cascading effects on the overall campus operation, both for those of you who are here on a working basis and those who are coming to do business with the town. And then the fifth thing I've highlighted is the form-based code. We did do a preliminary form-based code analysis for each of the options. That's exactly what your planning department goes through when a private development comes in, and looking at a very high level, how does this fit within the form-based code, which is trying to accommodate it as best as we can, knowing that there are restrictions and constraints on the site just because of existing building and existing. It's an odd property line. It's got, again, it's kind of a weird shaped lot. So how to best accommodate form-based code? I did have a brief meeting with Floria and had talked about how that would generally be viewed in terms of an internal review, and the physical location with setbacks and the like, and frontages and things having to do with building size and location would be where we would be looking at deviating, and then really focusing on the physical building itself and using the civic building component of the form-based code to give you something that looks, it
So
looks
design.
civic, it looks like a courthouse. It shows and presents itself for what you're trying to accomplish.
Let's pull up the concepts.
Yep.
Maybe start going through the concepts.
And so on those, those were the things that we went through, and just really briefly for each option. So we've got 4 options. We called it 1, 2A, 2B, and 3. One is somewhat of a standalone. This is the one that is in the center of the campus, and it best positions the building on a visual axis directly through the Veterans Park. And the intent was on this layout is the front of your building is straight down the vista from Route 9 down the axis of the park, and again, kind of getting that civic-minded vista of what this building is and how it presents itself. With that, it also gives us opportunity for the parking in terms of shared parking and circulation to better work with the rest of the buildings that are existing on the campus. One limitation that it does have with the parking and circulation is by putting the building right in the middle, you see some dead-end parking areas there on what would be the south side and on the north side. with that, that also presents opportunity, and we'll be working with the architectural team in terms of those entry points for the building itself, in terms of, again, secure and separate spaces between the public, the semi-public, and what I would, the most secure. The other thing that this layout does is there is a water, or a sewer line and a gas line that cross through there, so they would need to be relocated as part of the building. They're service lines, they're not extensive, so it's not an onerous effort in the overall scheme of things, but it is just something to be of note that there would be some really utility relocations as part of this.
But you're not seeing those as a tremendous problem?
Correct. That, yeah, there would not be an issue with doing that. It would just be something we would certainly reflect in the cost of in the estimate of the cost. Next one? Yes, so that was option.
It seems like everywhere, when I look at the survey, there's got to be utility relocation for every one of these in some degree or another.
To some degree, that first one is the one that's the most, because it does have your gas line and it has your sewer line that goes straight through that. It also straddled the property line, so that one would need a lot line adjustment, either a consolidation or an adjustment, depending on how, if you want to still keep it 2 lots, you can redo the lot, but that's.
In the lot line adjustment, it might be something that the town can process administratively.
Right.
Yes.
Similar to a form-based code application, which is also administratively processed. Even though the town can be exempt from that, it's a way to streamline those processes, and that could be a time and a cost savings to the town.
So you think the lot line adjustment would be easier, for lack of a better word, than the consolidation of 2
Well,
properties?
it could be essentially the same thing.
Okay.
Lot line adjustment or.
Right.
Yeah, and I was gonna
Lot-
mention, I mean, with the
You
reform-based,
talking to the microphone, we're streaming.
no, we're streaming. Whether it be form-based or regular zoning, I mean, the town is exempt.
Oh, yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yep.
But we want to try to at least accommodate as closely as we can. Our own, right, right.
Exactly, and I think there's nothing in the form-based code that I feel would be a showstopper. I think, again, the intent is to accommodate it as best as possible to fit the intent of that civic building section of the form-based code in this portion of the
Right.
town. So option 2A is the version that puts the same building and pushes it back into the location of where the community garden is right now. And this likewise maintains that vista through the Veterans Park, but pushes it back an additional, I think it was 100 to 150 feet. So it's further away, it's set back at the rear lot line. It is on one parcel, so in this case, you wouldn't need to have the consolidation or the lot line adjustment. The parking on this is rather inefficient, and that's the biggest con for this version is it wedges it and sets it in a corner that makes for a very inefficient use of parking. It also really separates this parking from the rest of the campus, so you don't have
As many opportunities for parking.
For
lot
shared
sharing.
parking.
it's not obvious. You can do it.
Right.
It's not far away, but just like the back lot right here behind this building, it seems like it's a mile
Right.
away, even though it's 75 feet away. So it does give a visual statement that it's a standalone building here on this option.
It's also relatively close to the maintenance building garage there, so
Yes, so that's
Takes the whole garden out.
takes the
Yeah.
whole garden out, and it's a visual detractor, as far as architectural features. There's a lot of discongruity in those types of buildings.
So that's exactly what that rectangle is, just in the notch between the parking spaces. This was set up to maintain and leave that building as it is, as an operating building for building and grounds with the access that they currently have. And if you go, Mark, to the next option, 2B is the same layout in the same location, but takes that building out. And we've shown a replacement for that building toward the north. Whether that's the right place for it, we showed it as an option where you can remove both the existing building and the trailer that's currently being used behind it, that they're both taking that area and combining it into one new building that could be constructed in advance of this as part of this program, but what it does is it really opens up the parking and shared parking to the south, dedicated entrances. And again, this would certainly be refined as we get into, more of the building program. But dedicated spaces in the rear for, whether it's for secure spaces, for sheriff, for the justices, some that can be dedicated as semi-private or semi-public for staff, and then some that would be designated as public, and then some that could be shared. So it gives a better layout, use, circulation of the parking and circulation than the previous version did. And again, in all of these, landscaping is one that we feel is going to be real important with regard to how to meet the intent of the form-based code. And this gives a tremendous amount of landscaping opportunity above and beyond either of the previous two options.
The last one?
And then Mark, one more. And option 4 is in the same place, but what we've done is we've rotated. So rather than respecting the axis from Route 9 and the park, now what we're doing is we have set this to align with the rear property line. All the other options are somewhat in alignment with the existing buildings. This rotates the building about 30 degrees. I think it mirrors it as well, but again, once you get through the building program, we'll have a better handle on where exactly the entry points, the various entry points would be. But the intent of this is to make a better use of this corner in and of itself. As you noticed, the previous one, the parking, while it was much more efficient in 2B than it was in 2A, there was still that wide triangle in the middle of space that was, it's an asset for landscaping, but it's also area that's not efficiently use of parking. So this was an opportunity to make what I would call a more conventional layout of the parking around the building. And the building itself, like I said, is the same building, just in a different orientation. And this one likewise replaces the building and grounds, facilities and grounds building and trailer with a new one.
Yep. And before we jump into the building programming, the building programming will help define the size of the building footprint, the location of primary entrance and service entrances into the building. And then what we really would be looking at for feedback is from the different options for where it's placed on the site. What are some of the key aspects that the town feels are most important? That way we can refine the building programming, refine the building concepts, and also refine the preferred, site placement. And then, get us to the next step with a more definitive concept that we can develop a program cost estimate, so you can see what the improvements might look like for funding purposes to go forward to the next step.
And one thing I didn't mention that would be part of any of these options is site improvements and parking improvements to the existing drainage
Right.
deficiencies that you have in and around the parking spaces, parking areas.
And I think what's important for the town to be thinking about is, for the interim and long-term, the use of the garden, and is there another location, another property that can accommodate that as we look at potentially impacting it here? The use of the old courthouse for those administrative purposes for not only, say, the water department, but maybe, grounds. Is there opportunities to take advantage of some space within the highway complex for equipment storage, so that way we can look at ways to really optimize the use and minimize costs while doing it.
Good. And the other item that we didn't get into any detail, but we made sure to account for is stormwater management, because there would need to be some stormwater management in and around for the additional pavement and the additional buildings, and that would be done through a combination of green infrastructure or detention, retention in the kind of the area toward the woods.
One of the important pieces here will be to also address the areas that have known drainage issues concurrently with whatever this plan is,
Like the whole site, you mean?
Yeah.
pretty much. With that, I'd like to, maybe, Mark, where do you want us, or do you guys want to talk about the site stuff a little bit? Or you want us to talk about the building programming and then leave the,
Let me just ask this, is there, I know is there anything that you think is a preferable site on the site? I mean, personally, I like the one that puts the court directly behind the park.
The first
Because I think
option.
aesthetically that,
yeah. If you
that's
can-
nice.
If you can go back to that one.
I think that's more,
There is a lot of, we kind of like that one too, but we don't want to tell you which one to go with, but, I thought it was important to come up here and point this out, because this is an important asset that is on the complex, and visually, having that be the gate focus, there's a visual focus from
Yeah.
the sign right to the main entrance of the courthouse.
I also think
They're
that,
two of the most predominant things on the campus that can really be accentuated.
right. And plus, I think it would make the park stand out more.
Yep.
And, I mean, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of parking, but I didn't count them. But this scenario also, to me, seems more obvious if you're coming into the complex, like, say, voting. Election day, we have people trying to park everywhere, and,
One of the things too is like with the garden, just making the garden a little bit smaller, if we were able to relocate that elsewhere, we can have it mirror the whole bank of parking here with an increased amount of parking, so we were trying to create more parking here that's also close to the front door of the town hall
Right.
versus the back bank of parking. There's some opportunities
yeah.
there.
I mean, we
as-
don't often have situations where we have a problem with parking, but,
Yeah, as we've shown it right now, of the four options, this has the most net increase in parking because we're reusing a set, an area that right now doesn't have parking. This had a net of 65. And something else that could be considered that Joe had talked about earlier is that perhaps you don't need it all the time, and part of it could be banked parking or it can be unpaved, where it's overflow parking.
Like we used to say, you don't build a church parking lot for Easter Sunday, right?
right,
But you
right.
gotta place people somewhere when you do have the crowd, so.
It doesn't move the maintenance shed, though.
Well,
I know.
that could be moved later
Right,
when you look at the next thing, which is addressing to the repurposing of the courthouse.
right.
I think that's a great spot.
Too, but I mean, how expensive is it to relocate a gas line? What do we,
It's not that expensive. Yeah,
that seems like a lot. I mean, I don't even,
well, compared to the
More.
overall cost of the project, it's really.
yeah, all right. Okay.
We'll put together a budget for you. One of the things that, we have a construction services group that does a lot of cost estimating. We collect the data as we do the cost estimates, so we can see how our cost estimates are matching up with actual bids. So we have a whole database, so you'll get a real world cost of what this is gonna be,
Okay.
that's realistic.
I studied this during the weekend, and I had come up with option one for many of the reasons you had. One of the things is the parking's crazy here, not just court, but when they have events here, and this was the 65 things. The relocation of the sewer and gas, I asked the guy, he said 15 to 20,000, but he also wanted to know if it was a service line or whatever kind of line it was. You mentioned that if they put it somewhere else, we've got to build that infrastructure anyway.
Yep.
So that is a cost. The fact it being there, we can still move the community garden to one of the town parks where it probably belongs anyway, and maybe use that land someday, if this isn't big enough, because I think the community garden fills up, right? So they probably need a bigger one. If you put it in one of the parks, it might be better.
They probably do, but water's a problem. Water's the problem.
Water in
any of
Shenandoah,
them.
huh?
No, there isn't.
There's a bathroom there.
Well, there's well water, so then probably could drill a well to service this, but, I mean, we wouldn't want the garden with municipal water probably anyway, although it is here.
Well,
We can figure that out.
You could easily put the garden somewhere and put another
Yeah.
dedicated water supply well there,
Yeah.
just purposely for irrigation.
I mean, the dog park is where we actually talked about it,
Oh, okay,
so, and I believe there is a well there.
yep. Well, I know you guys own a water company now too, so there might be a way to figure this out, I'm sure of it.
But, the things you talk about, the form-based code,
Yeah.
which this is the one that does the least adjustment to that, but we're exempt anyway, so I didn't really take that into consideration, but this is the one that doesn't do that. But I like that one out of all of them. I seen that was probably the most efficient cost-wise.
Do you have any comments, Jamie, on this discussion?
No, but I just came back from the restroom, so.
Okay.
I know you were talking about
you have
option
water?
one when I left, and when I came back, Woody was talking.
Yeah, do
about-
you have any sense from you or Floria about which option?
No, but at this point, you just have a rectangle on a piece of paper too, so you really can't do any
Yeah.
kind of form-based code review other than.
Right,
you
other
know,
than the location of the building.
Right.
Right.
So, you know,
Okay.
So
opinion.
we will have architectural renderings of the building with materials, but we gotta develop the whole concept of
Right.
the floor plan first, and there's a lot of questions still to be answered. And with that, Mark, if you wanna go to your page and, we put the most time for you because this is where we have the most questions that we need to talk about, and hopefully we can we'll get the questions out there, and that way we can, either get some answers today or at least, position us to start getting some more of these questions answered over the next, several weeks, knowing that the holidays are gonna be here shortly and we'll have to regroup in January.
Hey, you're not gonna work on Christmas Day? No.
I will get in trouble if I work on Christmas. I can't afford that anymore. This place was it off.
No, we know. Happy wife, happy life.
Yep. And I think you gotta go on the side, there's ups and downs on the side. No? Yeah, right there should be up and down. Then on the bottom, there should be a left and right.
Great on the microphones in this picture.
Tough to see a little bit up. I
You can actually probably move that microphone over to the podium if that's easier for you.
At the moment, that'll be,
Okay.
that'll be fine. I mean, I just, as part of the workshop, so, we've done a lot of courthouses around New York State and in different judicial districts. But, some of the questions we had, of course, that makes a huge difference with the size of this thing is, and that's what's on the spreadsheet here, is just, we got a column here on the left that kind of shows the spaces. The next one is kind of the existing square footages that had been documented. Labella put together a first guess sketch. We couldn't, in the third column is that we kind of compared that to, the OCA guidelines, the Part 34 guidelines, just to give us, to anchor this a little bit. My understanding is that towns are not approval process with the New York State Office of Court Administration. They're advisory at the town level, but it's still a good guidance to benchmark us there. But, thinking about the future, we don't want to, so we have what we have, but we really want to think about the next 10, 20, 30 years here a little bit. And I think that one of the things that I see happening at other town courts is the public assembly area. How many people do we want to accommodate? I haven't been here haven't observed what's going on in the town of Malta, but many times, many of the cases come in and they queue up in the courtroom, right? So for efficiency and things like that. So what do we think we want to accommodate? Because I hadn't seen a number, something like that, for the public assembly. What do we think we want to accommodate?
We talked about that, and we also talked about the future. And we came up with 125.
125 for the future?
The park presently has. Okay.
Okay.
That was discussion.
That seems reasonable. I guess you
Yeah.
can never really tell.
Right.
In the past, pre-COVID, that wasn't enough. We had way more people and it ended up being standing room only, waiting outside. But things have changed and who knows what happens, when they change back. So. I mean, I guess you look at the code too. I mean, how big does it have to be?
Yeah, I don't think code drives it. I think it's what you think, because what usually happens is people come and wait for their turn, right? So if it's 125 people,
They come at different times.
a little bit different times, but they're queuing up, right? They queue up in there, and so if we think there's overflow, the second part of the question is do we want to accommodate public waiting in a lot? So they go through a metal detector or screening area. Do you want them to wait outside? Do we give them waiting inside the courtroom, and do we give them waiting outside the courtroom?
Waiting inside the courtroom, I'm seeing her say that, and I agree. We haven't really had that problem. We have the porch on the one end. Occasionally, that will be used, but people
Well,
come
you also have
at
people-
different times.
I'm sorry, that aren't a party to anything, but they're just there with people. So you got one person could bring 3 or 4 people with them
Yes.
that,
It's a family event.
one sense they may have to wait outside sometimes. I mean, you can't tell them that though. It's a public process. So, I mean, I see what's thought here. I know this is just, first go at it. A waiting area, a secure lobby waiting area there. So, I mean, there's a thought process to actually what you've just said. So you have a place at least for a few people to wait outside
Yeah, and it's,
of the
and-
courthouse, but inside the building.
right, and
Courtroom.
and some places, they have very little to none, and the only waiting is for, the day-to-day business, people coming visiting the clerk's office. I should stop for a minute, your courts are afternoon, evening courts?
No, we are morning, daytime.
So-
But that can change. Again, it depends. I mean, we used to
So
be.
it's
we
a
used to
couple days
start
a
running-
week, right?
Pardon?
How many days a week?
Well, we're open every day, but court can happen anywhere from 1 to 2 to 3 days a week, where court's in session.
Different things going on.
We used to be at 2 o'clock on court for decades, and then it switched to 9 a.m. for both judges. So that can always change, too, down the road.
2 to 3 days a week then?
Currently, yes.
What would you think would be, Malta's growing, it's probably gonna grow some more with the next fab does come to town.
Yeah.
So what would be, from a projection perspective, we're probably gonna see more hours, right? What would you guys think is
We
a,
could add more days.
Yeah, not less, I guess is the way to say it.
yeah,
It's a good thing. I don't think we ever statistically ever tracked people in through the door, have we? Jen, have you ever seen that? I mean, you could go back and at least look at what's filed, but it's really not the same, because like I said, people show up that really aren't there as a party, so,
You do some evenings, I'm assuming? No?
Rare, I mean, that,
yeah, not anymore.
but that, it
Try to
changes
avoid
the
it.
judge, a judge.
Yeah, it could
sets the
change. A
hours.
different judge, the judge sets the hours. So a different judge down the road would say, well,
I work for.
we're gonna start at 5 p.m. and go until it's done. And there are some towns that still do it
Right.
like that.
Right.
But not
Some-
us.
To accommodate traffic court and things like that, I mean, I think some of the more misdemeanor things probably happen during the day, but sometimes the towns will have 1 day a week or something like that they run till 9 o'clock or something as
Yeah.
kind of a traffic court,
Right,
just to accommodate people's work schedule.
that's true.
Yeah, but it's just good definition from a flow standpoint, right? That's what we're looking for.
Right,
We're
yeah.
Looking for flow. And if we want to keep everybody, so they're not mingling around, that's the thing, is courts generally don't like people mingling around. You want them through a metal detector, not a lot of waiting space, and then get them into the courtroom. So then they're in quiet, then we're gonna queue up their cases, they come at different times, throughout the day. It's just, you're trying to provide some efficiency. So in that model, if our public assembly area is around 125, and then we'll calculate ADA, handicap accessibility seats, you gotta have 3% from, off the top of my head, I think has to be handicap accessibility. We'll factor that, into it.
Are you also factoring when you say, people knowing when the county sheriffs bring shackled.
That's a detention area that we have to talk.
That's not public.
That's okay.
That's not public,
Well,
and I want to
so
keep,
it is now, so-
no. How we do things now, right? I mean, we like to have, you know, ideally, court facilities like to have kind of 3 points of entry, right? You have your public screening entry, you have your professional staff coming in on entry, and then you have the either detainee, incarcerated individual, and you try to not mix the three until the courtroom. You try to have them all come, the strategic convergence until they all meet in the courtroom. All right, so we're gonna have minimum space in the lobby. On days that we don't have court, how much traffic is there? Is it a decent amount of
It's a decent amount, but it's steady throughout the day.
steady throughout the
So
day?
it's not like we need a holding area per
Yeah,
se.
but not a bunch of chairs, not a bunch of
No.
chairs. People are not waiting that long if
No.
they're in line for the clerks.
And they're coming right to the window.
Okay. So it's minimal, just from efficiency standpoint. Waiting areas. So that'll be factored in. And, you know, we'll provide, you know, at the clerk's main window, your main desk, do we need 2 windows? Do we need a possibility for 2 public to come up and talk to them at 2 different stations at the window?
Yes.
So we want some reasonable separation between them, because they're, right, probably 6 feet or something like that between the
Yes.
windows or something like that, okay?
I mean, not that, this is really totally up to you guys about this, but it looks like we're coming in here, right? Is that correct, Ruben?
Yep,
Right?
yeah.
So then you got them going all the way down here to pay their ticket.
Yeah, and I'm trying to, so this was a sketch.
Right.
This was a
Understood,
sketch,
yeah.
right. And so, you know, what I really want to hear about is the operation, and then we can tweak the sketch, is kind of what it is. And so I have waiting in the sketch and things like that we may not need, right? So that can be some efficiency.
Before we go much further, we sent you a sketch.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of thought went into that, and a lot of that because of the way we currently
You're
work.
talking to the microphone, Woody.
Okay, we sent you a sketch with a floor plan which had different pathways, which operationally is what we want. Okay, there was some things wrong in the sketch, which is the detention area had to have 2 separate areas by law for female and male, but that's what we want. The clerk, who's very experienced, the chief clerk, she has to be able to go to her office periodically during court and session. That has to be right next door. I think we made that clear before. What you're sending us is really not what we want. What we sent you is what we want. Maybe there'll be some additions and deletions there, but that's what we want.
Yeah, so I think there are, you know, some, the questions that I had with the sketch was, is the jury deliberation room gonna be a dedicated room, or are we gonna share that room?
To answer that thing you just got handed to you.
Okay,
It
but
could
it'll be
usable.
shared.
It'll be
We can
shared.
share.
Share,
Yes.
yeah, so,
share that.
my thoughts on this is where it's located here isn't in a good sharing position for you. So I would, you know, propose to move it in a position that's a little better sharing.
Do you have a copy of that
Just have to
sketch?
be careful with the jury because they have to be
Yeah.
kind of secluded,
That what you
Right.
want? Oh, a copy of your sketch.
which is kind of why I
that's what we
stuck them there, because they would be secluded in that area so that there was nobody that could kind of to them.
Yeah, and then we also, and when we say shared, I'm assuming shared with professional staff, not public.
Well, I mean, here's what I mean, it would be shared at different times. So in the event there's a jury trial going on, I mean, clearly that's the exclusive use of
Right.
the jury.
Right.
But apart from that, and quite frankly, I mean, there's just not a lot of jury trials, but it happens.
Right.
It does happen. So, then it says professional use, I mean, it really wouldn't be open to the public, right? I mean, there's no,
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm,
so I mean, I like it where it is here. I'm looking
So
for
the- yeah,
a sketch
so-
that we did,
so
I
the-
don't remember.
yeah, so the observation that I make for where it is it's near the public. I generally
In our
wouldn't see
sketch?
them, yeah,
Yeah, I
I
don't
generally
remember.
wouldn't see them near the
No.
public.
No, I mean, as long as there is as we've provided for other meeting rooms.
Right.
For the professionals, the attorneys.
Right,
That-
which
that
we
is-
did on the other side, like inside the courtroom. There's the DA, the public defender, and then one in the middle, or two in the middle, which would be for the attorneys to conference with their clients.
Correct.
Or any one of those rooms on the side could be used during
Thanks.
evictions or anything that they needed to conference. So that conference room itself, being as big as it would be for a jury deliberation room, would not, to be honest with you, would be rarely used. Because you're not gonna have a time where you would need that many people in a conference room. Really only juries. Because
and-
the other rooms would be for attorney and, you know, the respondents and plaintiffs in evictions, which is really the only other people that would be using the conference room would be to discuss things like that. So it would be like maybe 4, 5, 6 people at a time would be.
But I've seen the other town courts are using them as their break room, or as if they're meeting internally or something else like that. The way it's positioned on here, I would put it more towards the private side of your house and not the public side of the house. And it just appears right now that it's towards the public side of the house.
Correct.
So that would be. Files, I mean, just in the sketch, and again, we need to understand is, are you doing everything digitally now, or are you into the files on a regular basis? I'm very used to putting the files right near the clerks.
So we have 2 separate sets of files. We have files that are currently in our basement, which we maybe access maybe once a week, if that, which is the room kind of on the side of the courtroom.
Yep,
So that would be not often. That's where we would store-
archive, we'll call it archive.
Yes. Then the other files, we have, I think, in the
You're gonna weave them within the clerk's space?
clerk's space, yes.
Working files.
They would be like the working files that we're using on a day-to-day basis.
So sometimes in a new build, the working files, sometimes we put them in a room. But it's gotta make sense. It's gotta make sense for your.
We prefer no, because for example, if somebody's coming to the window, we're pulling their file right then and there. So to have to go into a room to get them just isn't feasible. We'd like them right accessible.
So one of the homework things that I need to do with you or get from you is, how many working files do you want with the clerks?
Okay,
You know, size of files, number of files, because we need to do we do a little furniture sketch. We like to build a program. It helps a lot from a justifiable standpoint, is we like to build a program square footage wise on actual furniture.
okay.
You could have furniture you love and you want to bring over, you could be wanting new furniture. I just want to get it right.
How
right?
many
And
filing
so,
cabinets?
how many filing
Like-
cabinets? In your archival file, how many filing cabinets we going to put in our archive? Are they going to be high density? Are they going to?
Archival is pretty much like a shelf-based system because they're in boxes for the most part. There are some large filing cabinets that would be in there that are, we're kind of starting to resort to those filings. But for traffic, for example, we have to keep them for 6 years. So those are boxes on shelves.
So
I mean, I could show you the basement to show you
Yeah, I'd have to go measure it. I'd have to either
the general.
come
idea.
back or whatever and measure
what
it to
we
make
have.
sure that the
Right.
the circulation works and the ADA works and everything. and it's in
Okay,
there.
so, and as far as upstairs, like in files that we use on a regular basis, those are all stored in filing cabinets. So,
And there's the digital files too.
And-
So
and
to answer that question
some
too.
are digital, yes.
So, yeah.
So, and I remember, right now, the basement is used for storage, not only for the courthouse, but other
Right.
uses as well. The intent, though, is not to have the courthouse be the all-purpose storage room for everybody, right?
Right.
Right,
It's
that's
gonna
a
be
security.
dedicated, secured facility.
With no basement, that's what's,
Well,
not that
that's
we
something
need
we
one.
can discuss.
We
you
can
know,
discuss.
it depends on, the amount of storage, record storage you wanna talk about, and, the media in which it's stored, because like the basements, sometimes you have to deal with dehumidification as well. It may be more prudent to try to put something on a grade instead, depending on the size and scale of what you need, if it's dedicated to the courthouse. Electronic record keeping is, for data management records, there's you know, that's kind of, things are moving in that direction. But you also have to maintain physical evidence, so there's, you know, some storage required for that, so.
Right. We have both. We utilize both. Like, we just did a huge project where we digitalized all of our records, but
Oh, good.
that's not something we can really do every year, just because it's not.
No, so you're gonna give us an
Keeping
idea.
like 6 years of records and then digitalizing them, and 6 years and then digitalizing. So we'll always have kind of that room in the basement will always be needed.
Yep. So we'll measure that up, make sure it fits ADA wise, put it in here. Your lateral or vertical files that are in there with the clerks, the two clerk spaces. We'll make a guess on, you may have a shredder, you may have other things in there, you may need,
Toward the court as it presently is now.
Mark has it.
I
And
didn't.
just to kind of clarify a little bit too, is, you know, I've asked Mark to take lead on this as we go forward, to take this from now to the finish line. So, you know, I'm here, you guys are stuck with me.
You're always here.
And I made a commitment to be up in front here, so you'll see more of me going forward.
So the other observation on the sketch was with the holding cells, we're, you know, we could have state police, sheriff people bringing people in, things like that. I would prefer to have that towards it looks like it's more on the public side than it is on a private side. So I would have put that back so that the public can't get to it, you know, and it looks like it's down the hallway from, you know, the bathrooms there. And I know this is a sketch and you don't have all the doors and walls in here.
Well, we could put a door to block that, but what we're looking at is the holding area, that is separate door, Sally Port area, where they would come in, where they wouldn't see anybody. We don't want them seeing the victims.
Right.
We don't, so we could have a door right here, in other words, that would close that off, and that holding area's gotta be split in two, and probably put a bathroom in there now, as we get further.
And you mentioned
Corrections
male,
law.
female, right?
That's corrections law now.
Yeah, I would think you'd want male and female. And then the other thing is just in the positioning of it, how do I get them? I want to usually insert them into the well area, not into the public. I don't want to walk them in.
Yeah.
I don't want to walk them in through the public, and so I don't have a pathway here. Without
I
going
mean,
through the file room, I don't have a pathway to get them into the well area.
The holding area's a door right there.
So the file room would actually only be accessible on this side of the building. So this side of the building would only be for the clerks and the judges, nobody else.
Right, so how do I get an incarcerated individual into the well area?
They would come
inside.
down this hall, which would
Yeah.
not really be accessible. I mean, there would be no reason for anybody to be in that hallway.
That's what I'm saying, is it just,
Except the
it just-
jury. I mean, the
just
way
it's
that you,
located here, I'd want it,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you potentially have there's gonna be no perfect probably layout for.
well, yeah, I just gotta, because I like to have it, you have your three circles here, you like to have your professional staff,
Yeah.
your private area, then you're gonna have your incarcerated holding cell area, then you're gonna have your public area, you know, so these three circles, so to speak,
Yeah.
and they're different
I
sizes.
agree. I mean, I
Three circles are there, and so with that intent in there, is that filing area is in your administrative circle. But I gotta weave in that incarcerated area so that it's there, so if an attorney wants to, do we want to allow attorney-client consultation prior to court?
It may be good to separate them too, just because people that are in the holding area, you want to bring in from a secured entrance. And your jury, if you ever did have them, you know, they gotta do, I actually was a juror for 3 days, so I got an experience. You do get a lunch break, so you gotta get in and out for lunch. So you want them to be able to.
And they're sharing the same hallway.
Yeah, they-
I would try to position it so they're not sharing the same
Yeah, you
hallway,
wanna
or
have
it's,
them
or it's
share the
timed.
hallway with regular visitors to the
Right,
courtroom.
right.
So you get in and out when you need to for lunch break.
So those are just initial observations to
think
still
that- yeah.
accomplish what you want to accomplish.
that we can work out. I think more, the sketch is more aimed at the,
Have these
But we
guys
can
come in.
put a door.
the clerk positioning, which again, Gen 2, I think, you know, on their layout, you could certainly, you know, we can just move one of these.
Yeah, in that sketch, we need to twist the courtroom.
Yeah.
Is what it
Right.
needs to happen. The courtroom, we need to keep the judges and the clerk and that thing, and then twist that courtroom, so that now, is it the chief clerk or all the clerks you want to be near?
They work together.
So in this one, you would come back into a hallway, but the clerks would be here. The judge's chamber's right across. Not a big distance, but if I had to come off the bench, there would be like a door here that I could go right into the clerk's office.
But-
I have my kind of own office, but, which I wouldn't
Sure.
necessarily need to access. It would be more this big area that we
Sure.
would need to access.
And then, and the clerks need to be near the front door.
Correct, which, yes, so if this was the front.
That's your
door,
day-to-day, yep.
then the windows, here. So, and, because we currently have 3 clerks, so there's 3 desks that would be set up in that area, plus the filing cabinets. But still, they need access to the windows and be able to see the windows from their desks. So however that needs to happen.
Right, and then, yeah, I mean, I understand it's just a sketch. And
It
they're just
is.
trying to make this as efficient as we can,
Right.
that's the other.
Yes, this was like chicken scratch.
Yeah, no, and flow is a big deal for me, because courtrooms can be a little complicated.
Well, the other thing is, right now you have 3 clerks, but
We never know, we might have 4.
there could be a time when there'll be
5.
4 or 5. Right.
Right.
We want to be sure we,
So that's something we should make sure we have enough room for, though, if in the future, there
Right.
could be the need for a
Right.
few more clerks in there.
Yeah, well,
Maybe, do you think there ever could be a need for a 3rd window?
I would say no, just,
we'd have to get a lot busier.
Our clerks are
Yes.
very efficient.
and if there is 1 or
Best in the
2
world.
people in line, then that's not a huge
Right.
thing. I mean, we have enough clerks that we can run both windows efficiently, so.
Now, I like, again, to keep noise with most of the courtrooms. I like to keep the attorney-client conference rooms out of the courtroom, because that just has a level of noise to it. So ADAs and public defender, I would have the doors on the opposite side. Let them come in, they're gonna meet before court, they're gonna do whatever, negotiations they wanna have. I've seen some courtrooms, some towns where it's inside, it's your preference from an operation. I just think it's a little noisier.
They're in and out all during the court proceeding.
But I couldn't
Yeah.
agree more. Because
In or out?
Out. The noise level for me, is an issue for me, just people walking in the front, the one door. So, and I've seen courthouses with, and courtrooms, and there isn't really that many that I can think of. I'm talking not just at the town level, with offices off to the sides. They're out there, but it's quirky, and they weren't, built for that. That's just the way things, developed. But
Yeah, like I know Stillwater, theirs are in the courtroom for the purpose of, for us to be stalling our procedures because we're waiting for an ADA
to come in and out.
To come in
There's
and
that
out.
issue, sure.
because it's nonstop. So like, for example, our ADA is in and out nonstop because they're either
My
meeting-
sister was one.
meeting with
Lined up.
attorneys and then they're in there for whatever case at the time.
No fish balls.
So
So
you're
it's,
you're saying the access to the conference rooms they should be able to access them from the courtroom? I mean, I know went over to see Stillwater's and.
I would
they-
rather not see that because,
You like them
So you
outside.
like them outside?
yeah, I mean, there's a control of the courtroom. That's what one of the biggest things that the judge
That's my
has
2
to
cents,
have.
but that's what I have
And-
typically seen. I want to see the courtroom as contained
Yeah,
and curtailed as possible. Let all that activity with the kids and the guardians and the traffic and whatever else is going on,
Yeah.
let it happen outside in that lobby.
I mean, there's a reason why that's not probably, you've seen Superior Court rooms. I mean, we know that's not what this is, but the reason is just that, I mean, the what's going on in that courtroom is important.
Right.
And you get all this potential.
All these sidebar
chaotic
discussions.
Things going on, and I often have to stop, remember, and I just say, I would just wait a minute until everything calms down. So, but on the other hand, there's that. I think that's, that would be my preference.
Yeah, so we need consensus. I'm here for you. It's your courtroom.
I just wrote a note to myself, somehow we have to figure a way that's easier than what's in our current sketch for them to get into the courtroom, so they don't have to go all the way down here and around and then back up. Simple as putting a door something.
Yeah, I would put them, yeah.
Right, in yours, they're not very far from.
Well, right, in this sketch.
Right.
there-
Well,
this
and to
sketch.
be honest with you, it's me coming off the bench to go get them.
So she
So-
can't walk all the way down here.
You know what I mean? So,
Well, you know, then, you know, in the one sense, what you bring up is more of like, you know, also a policy position where that's really the DA's issue and problem, and it shouldn't be ours. Where what you're seeing more sometimes in our courthouse, and it really isn't, I suppose it's part of this discussion, is that the assistant DA is now at the bench more often. In other counties, they're always there. There is no getting them back and forth, you know, because their DA, their elected DA, tells them, you've got to be at the bench the entire time. And they are. So, you know, and then potentially then this is what we bring up with them, because it can be an issue, not with just them, but the public defender and the private defense counsel too, of them conferring with their clients, which of course that has to happen, and the negotiation has to happen. But, you know, when the flow starts going and all right, now they're done conferencing, let's try to get it done, come on and up to the bench.
I wonder if you put a glass wall in. I wonder if that hallway, I wonder if you make a hallway on the side,
Distraction,
a glass?
distraction. That's what, Clifton Park's got a fishbowl down there, and both judges don't like it, because it's a distraction. They see people in there.
Going in and out, in and out, and that, you'll have to decide.
Yeah, we can talk about it further.
Because, again, it's flow. You're back to your flow situation on where to put them. Size of those rooms, is it 4-person room?
Looking at the size of the rooms they currently are, I asked them, and they both said the rooms were sufficient. I don't know the actual square footage of them.
No, that's where I need to know. If
Yeah,
it's,
we'll see.
if it's
See how
the
they
ADA and 3 chairs, a desk and 3 chairs,
There's a file cabinet in there. There's a computer
Right.
is
in there. There's a
that about right, or should I
Yeah.
accommodate six
he,
people in there?
basically a desk and 2 chairs.
2 chairs, yeah, even.
More than
Desk,
enough.
that,
Yeah,
They
because
can
the filing
accommodate
cabinets
3 or
that are
4.
in there are not for the DA, they're ours. So,
Right.
they're just there because we have no place else to put them.
Oh, so if we can accommodate them in the clerk's area.
Right.
That'll make, and that's where the OCA 100 square foot comes in as a starter,
Yeah.
is where it is, right?
Yeah, so basically it's just a desk, and
Okay.
on their desk, they have like a, you know.
So
a
for all
printer.
4 rooms, we're gonna do that.
Yep, a desk and 2 chairs
That's
would
what
be
okay.
sufficient.
Yep. Okay, so that helps me out. See, assistant ADA, you took care of that. We're gonna do 2 cells in there. Metal detector. Everybody's doing screening different. Life has changed in the last 10, 15 years.
We have a 30-inch metal detector, which is not according to ADA code. However, there's a way around that. If we put the metal detector in one area, you put an area alongside that. This is
Correct.
the doorway. And that doorway has to be more than 36 inches, and it has to have an area where the person in a wheelchair
Can be one.
can see their stuff. That's code, ADA code. So as long as that was wide enough, we can use our present metal detector, because they're not cheap. Because I even looked into if we could expand the top to make it bigger.
No, we usually do a bypass lane and then you wand them,
Bypass lane according to ADA standards.
and then you can wand them. But we don't need, do we need a table to take all their valuables out? Do we need a place to store the stuff that is?
No, they have to be able to see it. That's the way it reads.
If you're,
Goes here.
but if they're gonna take something, they have a pocket knife.
Tell them
Are you,
to go back
are
to
you
the
throwing the
car.
pocket knife away? You telling them to go back to the
Tell them to go back to their car.
parking lot?
Yeah.
And then start over? Okay.
Right, we have an area right now for this.
So no storage. We're not gonna accommodate
Yeah.
for security.
Just a table is
A
sufficient.
table to go through,
Like
metal
we have a
detector,
table,
and a wand.
like a stand currently that has drawers underneath it that close, so if they needed to store something, they could store something in there.
Excuse me 1 second, I'm sorry.
Okay.
There's a locking thing there too, but that's not really a problem. As long as we have a table that they can see, their pocketbook goes there and then they come through.
Yep.
We have a wand, they can do the wand instead.
But we're not gonna do x-ray.
No, not yet.
Yeah.
The world is changing, so you never know.
That's right.
Judges getting shot.
Might have to use a little extra
Go to Greenfield, I have court.
future planning for electrical and power supply for them.
And that's That was one of the questions I had, is how robust? Every town is different, but life is changing so fast in front of our eyes that, okay,
So Jen is leaving, so let's give her a minute. Is there anything else that you can think of that you really want to?
No, I mean, if you are able to come over to the court and we can,
Yep.
I can kind of show you, I think it would be easier to show you than
Absolutely.
to.
I'm gonna wanna measure the stuff and to make sure that, I like to base the room so much around actual furniture needs and flow needs.
Yeah, and
is
you can
is
see what
nice.
we have now, and I can kind of give you an idea of what else we would be looking for.
Well, one of the things you might wanna start thinking about is with furniture in particular, you're probably gonna get all new furniture for the new facility, right, for the most part?
No.
When you get it built and fit up.
I don't think so.
So
What do you
well,
think?
so how long,
No, because we just got new desks.
so, so if it's like it can be all moved within a short period of time, you can reuse it, right?
Oh, yeah, Terry's not.
Terry's,
crazy.
yes, it can be moved.
It'll be over a weekend when court is not in session.
Yeah, so
Ask a question.
Yep.
Is there anything, like, does the judicial system anywhere have any kind of recommendations for future growth? I mean, if you, based on, I don't know, town population or.
I don't know, that would probably be within the town board to know about town growth.
Well,
No, we
I'm
don't
just
really
saying,
have
you
that.
know,
No, not that I've seen. I haven't seen that.
money to build.
Right, we want to be sure it's going to last 40 years or more.
So you gotta borrow money for 30 years, you want it to last.
Last 30 years at least.
So I just, you know.
We're not
I'm just
borrowing money.
wondering About
I think the biggest,
statistics, you know.
I haven't seen that, Barbara. I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
No.
but I think the biggest flexibility they've already identified is if they go to 3 days a week, you have 2 more days. Right? I mean, so you're gonna accommodate a lot of growth if you decided to go to 2
It's like I said about the two
Simple,
chambers.
and what that might mean is instead of trying to cram everybody in on one day, you expand your days, and that's what we've
Right.
had to do.
Right.
Right, so
So it
that's
would, like,
kind- right,
expand
that's kind
out,
of your
um,
internal growth.
The hours rather than the people.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's helped tremendously, and then,
Did you talk about like court officers and do they have to have a dedicated area or not? Or-
you don't really have a court officer, right?
no, we do.
On court
We have,
day.
on court days, we have one, we're hoping at the
You will
beginning of
have
the year,
two.
we'll have 2.
So is
kind of
is the security office for the people manning the metal detector? Is that what that's
They
for?
don't need an office.
So
Yes.
basically, I think in here, we did put a security room so that.
You did, and I didn't know, and I'm used to some kind of a security room for the holding area, because when the sheriff's office there, they're in the custody of the sheriff, they gotta watch them. They gotta be able to watch them while they're there. When you get, sheriff, police testifying for this, where do they sit? Do they sit in the courtroom, or do we sit them someplace else? I didn't see them. They could hang out in the jury deliberation room, except for days that you have jury. Sometimes I provide a room for the professional, who are there on a regular basis, right?
They actually could be in the conference room except when we have a jury.
Yeah, otherwise they could be in the waiting area,
Yeah, or they-
outside the courthouse.
Usually in the
courtroom.
DA's office, they tend to hang out in the DA's office.
Yeah.
Yeah, but unless they're doing something, right? Unless
Yeah, if it's a witness, for example, that's gonna be testifying, whether it be a police officer or somebody else, it could be in the conference room, it could be in using this sketch in the lobby waiting area, which is often the time in courthouses, that's where they're outside the courtroom someplace.
And the bench is gonna be multimedia bench, the judge and the clerk are both gonna be on the bench at the same time, because you're a team.
2 clerks.
2 clerks at the bench at the same time. It's a
Yes.
team approach is what I've generally seen at the town level. Yep.
And ideally, something behind the bench, like a table for the printer, things, files, when we just,
Copy machine.
Yep.
Things like
yep,
that.
Yep. Yeah, because it's a very working court. My experience is at town level, it's a very working court.
yes.
Right, you need to go over there and see.
And when you do, you're going to say, how do they manage to have court in this building?
Well, then you'll know why we're actually here today.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point. We're trying to bring the shackled people in so that they're not seen by the public.
Right now, the shackled people are using the same restrooms as the
Right.
employees.
Right.
So-
And that's what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah,
That's what we're trying to avoid.
yeah.
Same
Yeah.
entrance.
Same entrance, same everything.
Right.
So we, Passett, I know Jen has to go?
I do have to. go,
Okay.
but- If,
More from you guys?
Yeah, major really helps,
Yeah,
so
well,
we get to fine tune, it gives us an opportunity to fine tune the sketch. Do that and,
yeah, if you
sense to
just want
schedule
to
something
reach out
while
to,
we're
I
all
mean, I'm
here
there
for
usually
the
Monday
follow-up,
through Fridays,
or-
8 to 4.
I'll have Melissa try to schedule
Stop in
something
and
tomorrow.
We'll
So can
I'm
we
not
just
allowed to
walk
mess with
through
my own
everything.
circle
calendar.
back and where are we, so we haven't made a decision about physically where this is gonna be.
No,
No, like, and we could either do like a poll
You can go
scrolls,
ahead.
and
I
I
can
just
go.
get a sense of where people,
Sure, I'll talk
what's
to you.
way up, thinking,
Yeah.
leaning towards now, that would help.
I like the first one.
Yeah.
I do like the first one.
thank you.
That makes most
Behind-
sense.
Yeah.
That's what I always thought, right, as you say,
Right.
it's that flow.
You like this parking?
and I,
From the
yeah.
street, you can see it, people can find it.
The back, is that?
No,
No, that
Right.
number one.
right,
A.
right behind
A or B.
right behind the
Right.
Yeah.
Memorial Gardens.
Facing forward.
Yeah.
It's the least form-based code.
Is
the
that,
least
I think,
type of thing.
I think that's where the garden is, right behind the
Where-
memorial.
Right behind the memorial, behind the
Yeah, that's,
Veterans Park. Plus, I think they'll highlight the Veterans Park, to have the building behind it. I think it'd be nice.
yeah, I think it's the flow of the
Yeah.
town buildings here and the parking, it works.
Big thing.
I think it's a game breaker.
All right, well, I'm gonna have, well, let me know when you think you might be ready. We'll have Melissa set up a follow-up meeting.
Yeah, we'll have a follow-up
Here,
workshop.
name and look.
During
Yeah.
Business day.
So just to kind of recap briefly, thank you for, entertaining us with this workshop. I would envision we're gonna have a follow-up workshop as we're taking the
Right.
information we got from today, refining the building programming a little bit, refining the site concept, probably leaning towards that option one.
Right.
We'll refine it a little bit more. And then we may still have a couple of questions we want to talk about, because I think we'll also be introducing, some of the building architecture and some of the landscaping, so we can have some
Right,
conversation
right.
about that. And then after that workshop, then we would be able to produce a final set of deliverables that'll include a summary of the completed project, what the program turned out to be, the architectural renderings of the floor plan and elevations, the rendering of the preferred site plan, and then we would develop a budget recommendation
Right.
for, what we believe to be your, here's your entitlement process, bidding process, construction process, and here are what we believe to be the cost to get you from where we are now to the completion.
Okay,
We might even be able to work out a tentative schedule, depending on when you say go, what that would look like to get it
to get it to the finish line. Okay. Perfect.
Do you think we need to do, this will be after the next step, but do we need to do a kind of a visioning thing for what the aesthetics might be and show the town,
I think if we,
or do you have a vision?
there are some concepts that we can pull from the provisions of the form-based code, and I think, when we come back, you get a sense of the. what's on the
Campus? Yeah,
and
sure. I just didn't know if there was,
Yeah,
We'll try
no,
to find a theme that might blend well with,
with the campus.
character of.
Right.
Because it's an opportunity, the courthouse is one of the more predominant buildings in the municipality, so you want to give it the respect that it deserves, and then as it meets form-based code and you're looking at what you gotta do with these other buildings, they should all start to try to
Right.
replicate the
What-
types of material that's
right.
used. It may not have the same presence on the campus, but you don't wanna
Right.
go with metal siding if you're gonna have, good quality building materials on
Right.
the courthouse.
all right, well, appreciate everybody's time.
This is
and
great.
Look forward to getting back together again.
Good meeting
I
you.
like the interaction, it was good.
Yeah,
So I just had some, a thought of trying to get these gentlemen some answers so that, so the next time we're meeting here, the process can move along. As often as we say this, the process can take a long
Yeah.
time without answers. So there's only two of you guys here as far as board members go. So I don't know, if we
signed
could
in.
meet with them individually, together, I don't really care. I'll certainly make myself available to try to bring them up to speed to see what we're talking. Like, for example, let's make a decision where the courthouse is gonna
Yeah.
sit, you know?
I mean, I'll try to
Those
reach
things
out to
kinda
each of
things.
them to at least get
Great.
that part.
Yeah,
Together.
so
I
we
mean, the
can, so we
interior
can
is
really
supposed
get some
to-
marching
Yep.
orders and
Yep.
not be bogged down in the, well, we don't know yet. Kind
Oh,
of,
I 100% agree with you, Jim, so that's
Great.
important. And like I say, I'll do what I can, show them. I think one doesn't really care where it goes.
I'll go make copies
Leave
Is
her note
everybody
there
on
for
there?
everybody.
Yeah, which I get, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not for everybody.
Yes.
Can I just have you put your email address in
Gotta
there so I can
include
make sure
everybody
that
that
we're
wants
doing
to
this
be
next
included.
meeting?
We're moving on with or without.
Yeah,
On a business card?
no, I try to include them. I try to make sure.